city, except for me. I'm here. And you guys are here as well. Great to have you. Jedediah Bila, Griff Jenkins. It is July 25th. Can you believe it? Middle of the summer. I have been across the country in an RV. It's true. But I'm back alive, thankfully, and 7 kids that I'm aware of at this moment still alive. And it's great to be with all of you as well. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Can I just say, Pete, it's an adventure to go to the grocery store with one child and a dog the size of, a mouse. I have no idea how you managed to pull this trip off, but I'm going to need to see lots of photos behind the scenes because that is quite an endeavor,
we
my
might
friend.
share some. Griff did say there is an RV hierarchy that I was not aware of when you pull into campsites.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. And I learned that we were very low on the hierarchy quickly.
We gotta talk about this throughout the show today. We got 4 great hours, but the RV thing, I've never done it. I had a friend that did it, and there's a whole hierarchy,
yes,
and it's a culture in and of itself. Justice Clarence Thomas, a big RV enthusiast, been doing it for years and years. You are a newbie, and we're just glad you made it back safely.
You could tell we were a newbie when we pulled in with our firestorm. And half the campsites only allow you to have 4 kids. We had 7, so we had to lie on the application just to get into the campsite and then hide the kids and then let them all out the door, and they couldn't kick us out. So that was more to come on this as we go. It will not be an RV show only, but it's great to be back. And we got to start with a little bit of news as well, including this. A Fox
are responding and pushing back, not only with just the local leaders responding, Jed, but also against the media coverage. I'll give you a quick example. Just an hour ago on The Wires, the headline in The Wires, racial injustice, Portland, feds disperse rowdy protesters. It's anything but rowdy protesters, as we've seen the violent anarchist. And here is what the U.S. Attorney for Oregon, Billy Williams, said, quote, "This is just mindless violence, and anyone who defends the violence is enabling this to continue. Look around. Do you think it's okay? Is there any justification for this? Portland is losing its soul right now. What I'm telling you is you seem to refuse to call something late-night activity that is criminal." That is such an important quote, yes, from Billy Williams, because simply there may be protests geared towards racial injustice earlier in the day, but after midnight for 58 straight nights, it has been pure violent criminal activity.
Yeah.
And we have Mark Morgan, the acting CBP commissioner, coming up at 7:15. This is an important interview. He has consistently called them out as his officials and agents and officers have been getting physically injured as their federal courthouse there in Portland is under siege every night.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing from him. You know, when my kids come home someday and say, "It was just late night activity, Dad, don't worry about it," I'm going to say, "What were you doing?" And of course, this is not late night activity. It's sheer criminality has to be called out. Now, yesterday, there was a bit of... It almost feels beta. It was like El Presidente interviewing the president. Dave Portnoy, the president of Barstool Sports. It was. If you didn't see the whole interview, go on Twitter, watch the whole thing. He said it was surreal to be there interviewing the president of the United States, and he did right outside the Oval Office. He asked the president a bunch of sports questions, and we'll get to some of that today in the program. But he asked him about these threats, tearing down of statues, and Dave Portnoy, El Presidente of Barstool Sports, asked the president of the United States about it. And here's what he said.
We are for justice, but we're for law and order. It's got to be law and order. And there is law and order. I put something out when they were starting to rip down statues. I went out, I found an old law, an old bill. You couldn't get it passed today. You get 10 years in jail, 10 years and no games. And we have a lot of people in jail right now. If you rip down a statue, a federal statue, because the states have to take care of their own, unfortunately, because I do that too. But you rip down a federal statue, you get 10 years in jail. 10 years, no, 3 months. And nothing's happened since then.
Yeah, I mean, you have to fear consequence. You have to know that if you're doing something wrong, someone is going to hold you accountable. And what you see is just people throughout these cities. You know, when we're highlighting places like Portland and Seattle because you see massive violence erupting on streets, you see things being burned down. I have to tell you, I was in New York City, in Manhattan, for the first time yesterday, the day before yesterday, and I was there later in the evening. I've lived in Manhattan for a very, very long time, and I have to tell you, for the first time in a long time, it felt unsafe walking around on the street streets, in areas that should not feel unsafe at all and have not felt unsafe for a really long time. It was starting to feel like pre-Giuliani New York City. So even if we're not highlighting cities, like because you don't see, there is a difference between what's going on in Portland right now and what's going on in Manhattan. But there are places around the country that are shifting, and there's a lot of people in those places.
View or entertaining clips, and so the president may be expanding his electorate, finding voters that would normally not vote for him. Many of these will be millennials and young people, because all of a sudden in this area venue where they normally go to for the pizza review, they're hearing from the president and they may agree with him.
Yeah, it was smart. I mean, you watched he ended it with a FaceTime with his dad, who is not a supporter of the president, and ultimately, I mean, it is a new way to reach people who are watching the madness that we're covering today and saying, I don't get it. Like, I understood there were protests 2 months ago. Now we're just burning buildings. What is this all about? And I turn it to my sports channel, and it's a political protest when I watch basketball or baseball as well. So where do I go, and how do I reconcile it all? Smart move, and it was a good interview by El Presidente of the Presidente.
America's third largest city, plagued by an uptick in violence. More than 1,600 shootings have been reported in Chicago this year. That's a 47% increase from last year. As Chicago's crime soars, one local pastor believes help lies in the power of prayer, and he's organized prayer walks around neighborhoods most impacted by that spiraling out of control violence. Joining us now is Pastor Edgar Rodriguez. Pastor, good morning to you. Happy Saturday, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Humbled to be here. Thank you.
Pastor Rodriguez, you started on July 13th in Humboldt Park, walking the streets, trying to get what?
Push back against the violence, give people hope, and really address the crime that we were seeing in our communities.
And you believe that the answer lies in the power of prayer. What has been the reaction to your efforts to bring people into the faith?
Yeah, I think positive. In my part of the community, really the burden to march through other neighborhoods was an overflow of what God had led my family and I to do in our own community, specifically in the block that we've lived on. We've taken a very proactive approach, not reactive, where if someone gets killed, then we go out and pray, or then we go out and march. But just this idea of owning my community, owning my block, praying, getting to know the people, asking individuals if they need prayer, especially those who may be involved in gang activity and other activity that is unlawful. And so we engage it, we pray for them. In my part of my community, by God's grace, we've seen results. We've seen individuals change. We've seen violence go down. So, yeah.
And when you talk to people, Pastor, what do they say about local leaders? Do they feel that the mayor and the local leaders have abandoned them, or do they believe that they're protecting them?
In reality, this has been something that the church has been supposed to own. And so political figures and things of that nature don't necessarily come up, but it's just like, hey, this is what Christians are supposed to do. Are you going to do this more, or is this just because things are happening? And
you'll continue to walk the streets?
Absolutely. So as long as there's a need, and so as long as people need to hear the good news of Jesus, we as the church need to be out there.
Well, we will certainly be praying for the community of Chicago, because you've got a crisis on your hands. Be safe out there. Thanks for joining us, Pastor Ed Rodriguez. Thank you, sir.
God bless.
We are back with some quick headlines. The Washington Post settles a $250 million defamation lawsuit. Covington Catholic high school student Nicholas Sandman sued the Post over its botched coverage of this viral confrontation in 2019. Sandman was accused of confronting a Native American activist in D.C. Additional footage later revealed Sandman was actually the one being harassed. And the Supreme Court rejects a Nevada church's bid to block state restrictions on attendance. The church accused the state of discrimination because it allowed more people at casinos and restaurants than houses of worship. The court denied the appeal in a 5-4 decision. Over to you, Pete.
Thanks, Jed. All right, calls to defund the police radiating from the left, but the movement is turning some Democrats against their party. In fact, one group comprised of former Democrats has seen a surge in membership with 85,000 members joining the Walkaway campaign in the last 60 days. Joining us now is former Democrat and founder of the Walkaway campaign, Brandon Straka. Brandon, good morning. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Talk to us again about this dynamic, about why people, they may have been part of protests at the beginning, but they see where it's going and they're leaving the Democrat Party. Why?
Well, because I think that there's such an extremity that's happening right now from the left. I mean, this is just, we're oversaturated with it constantly. These images of people burning, looting, committing acts of violence, committing acts of vandalism. And there are a lot of people who are moderate liberals, who are moderate Democrats, who at this point, I think, are feeling like they have to make a choice here. Am I going to continue to go down this road with these extremists, with these fringe people who are acting crazy? Or am I just sort of being pushed over toward the center or toward the right? And that's where a lot of people are finding themselves. And so, as you said, within the last 60 days, we've seen over 86,000 people join the Walkaway movement and thousands of testimonials rolling in. It's been absolutely incredible.
Well, and here's what's cool about what you do. It's not you sign up with, on the email list and you're a member. You have to submit a testimonial about why you want to join. And you have people that actually vet those videos. How are they hanging in with all the backlog of demand?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked me that. Thank you, because every time I do an interview, I forget to thank my amazing volunteers and my amazing moderation team. So thank you, Walkaway volunteers and moderation team. They're working themselves to the bone over here. We have, as we speak, about 46,000 more people who are in the queue waiting to be vetted. So wow, they're doing an amazing job.
So you're verifying these are real people with real stories who truly do want to leave the left, and they realize what it's become. And now you're manifesting in rallies. I think hopefully we'll have you back on to show some of the images of that difficult time with the COVID-19 stuff. But talk to us about the rally locations where you're going to go.
Sure. Well, actually, today we're about to launch the very first Walkaway Rescue America rally. We'll be taking these all around the country. We're in Baltimore today, and I would highly encourage anybody, if you're even close to the Baltimore area, just make the drive today, because at 3 p.m. at the Baltimore War Memorial, we're kicking off our very first Rescue America rally. You can go to walkawaycampaign.com to register. But the purpose of these rallies is to give a voice to people who are in that common sense center, or people who are on the right, who are sick and tired of sitting home watching their television sets, watching these radical people destroy America. I've been saying I feel that America is in peril. America needs heroes right now. This is time for conservatives to show up. This is time for people in the center to show up, because we want to show people on the left that they do not have carte blanche to destroy our country. We are going to show up. We're going to fight back. We're going to fight for America. And I want to see everybody in Baltimore today. They can go to walkawaycampaign.com to register for the rally.
You are so right. We are in need of heroes, and Brandon, you are one of them. You're building a real movement. God bless you. Good luck. Keep us posted. Send us photos. We'd love to have you back on the show.
Will do. Thanks, Pete.
All right, Brandon.
As schools draft their plans for the fall, remote learning has exposed how detrimental staying out of the classroom can be for some students. Reports showing 22 million students rely on free or reduced price lunches at school, and 20% of Black and Latino families don't have internet access at home. Meanwhile, the CDC has rolled out new reopening guidelines emphasizing the importance of in-person learning. Here to discuss is family therapist and author of the upcoming book, Disconnected: How to Protect Your Kids Against the Harmful Effects of Device Dependency, Tom Kirsting, and Fox News medical contributor Dr. Jeanette Neshwa. Thank you both for being here today on this really important and pretty controversial issue of reopening schools. Tom, I want to start with you. By the way, I love your book title. I wrote a book that brought a little bit of that in, and I think it's a really important topic to talk about with kids. But getting to this issue of schools reopening, can you speak to, from a psychological perspective, some of the potentially damaging effects of remote learning as opposed to in-person learning for particularly young kids?
Well, I'll speak to it as I'm already seeing it, right, since the spring, in fact, at my private practice. I'm getting so many phone calls from parents with kids, preteens and teenagers that are experiencing a tremendous amount of anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, and so forth. And what kids need, what human beings need, is social and emotional interaction, particularly kids. It's just critically important to their development. Now, we're kind of sticking them in their bedrooms, staring at a screen all day long. And they've been doing that already on their own. And now what we have is kids sort of just being kind of sucked into this vortex of this cyber world. That's one of my biggest fears. And they're not they're not really living in the real world. It's sort of a dehumanizing effect, and I worry that this is going to escalate even further once, fall gets here.
Yeah. Dr. Neshwat, I want to talk about the medical component of this. We know that COVID-19 is a very different animal from the flu in terms of the way it attacks the body, the effects, the way it impacts different communities. That has been made abundantly clear in the last few months. However, if you look at COVID-19 and the flu simply in comparison to how it affects children, let's take a look at some of those stats. 36 children under 15 years old have died from COVID-19. Since 2010, an estimated 511 children ages 0 to 17 have died on average each flu season. Now, we don't shut down these schools during flu seasons. That's not something that has been done in the past, unlikely to happen in the future. So is that an indicator of what policy should be like with respect to COVID-19 at this point when it comes to children?
Yes, absolutely. Knowing these numbers, knowing the data and this information can help us to determine what steps and what measures we need to take in the classroom. We know that children under the age of 10, they're less likely to transmit the virus to one another and to teachers and to other adults versus those who are older, teenagers over the age of 10 to 18-year-olds. So it gives us an idea of what steps, what measures we need to take. But we have to remember, even though the risk is lower, it still exists. And, one person can be a super spreader, and children can suffer from what's called pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome. And even though that's rare, for some people it can be life-threatening. So we certainly need to keep that in mind.
Tom, I want to ask you, because this has been brought to my attention a lot by parents, is there an impact, though, of kids going into school with all of these guidelines? For example, being in masks all day, hours and hours, being in these pods, in these bubbles, not having a recess, not having a normal lunch period. Some parents are coming to me and saying, I don't know, is it worse to have them there under these circumstances, just in terms of normal social interaction, than to keep them at home? What do you think about that?
Well, it's almost like an imprisonment a little bit, and I can visualize this already with schools that do send the kids back wearing the masks all day long. I wear the mask when I need to, but I don't feel comfortable wearing it all the time because I feel like I have a hard time breathing. But I think it's not. One of the things that kids might lose out on with wearing masks in school is as human beings, we communicate mostly non-verbally, believe it or not. And we pick up on the nonverbal nuances from one another. And it's hard to read one another, especially kids that are in an important social and emotional developmental stage. And I worry that kids are going to lose very important critical communication skills and therefore emotional skills. So, we have to figure out a way to get kids back to normalcy and back to the way things are supposed to be. We can't have this become some sort of a permanent thing where kids are wearing masks at school and they have to social distance in the school playground and so forth. Otherwise, we're going to have larger problems down the road.
Yeah, and not to undermine the importance of mask wearing. Obviously, we know that that's significant, but we also have to consider the impact of having that mask on the face for a child for hours and hours on end. It's just a legitimate concern that parents have expressed. Dr. Neshwat, just quickly, we don't have a lot of time. We've seen a lot of kids not be able to get into their standard appointments for things like vaccinations and whatnot as a result of COVID-19 closures and concerns by parents that their kids will be exposed to COVID-19 by going to those regular appointments. Is there an impact to that?
Yes, absolutely. Vaccine hesitancy is a global threat. And, vaccines alone prevent 30,000 deaths each year. So it's very important. I can understand parents, they're fearful of contracting the disease. Sometimes it's problems getting to the clinic. Sometimes it's cost, transportation, child. So it is safe. Call your doctor, talk to them, and get your child in to get their vaccines, because with flu season just around the corner, they're going to be more susceptible to serious complications.
Thank you both for being here. Obviously an important topic. I know a lot of parents watching at home are really appreciative of your voices, so thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jed.
We're going to head over to Griff and Pete now.
And now to some extreme weather. Tropical storm Hannah now gaining strength as it moved toward Texas. It's expected to become a Category 1 hurricane before hitting southern parts of the state today.
Preparations are now underway. Crews handing out thousands of sandbags for people to protect their homes and businesses along the coast. Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth is tracking it all as the storm churns towards the coast. Rick, good morning.
Hey, Griff, yeah, it's getting very close to the coast. Going to run out of room to strengthen anymore, which is ultimately good news. The center of the storm just off the shore of Texas there, and it's really gotten its act together. Had not forecast to be this strong, but now it's at 70 miles an hour. 74 is that trigger where it is strong enough to be classified as a hurricane, and we're almost there. You can see the rain with it. It is starting to see some of those rain bands move on shore, and throughout the next couple of hours, you'll just get successively stronger and stronger until the center of it moves on shore, which at this point looks like it's going to be to the south of the Corpus Christi area, somewhere along South Padre Island. The radar looking very organized. I probably, by the time we get the next advisory coming out, the next full advisory, at least at 11 o'clock, I think this thing will probably be a hurricane. The temperature of the water is certainly plenty warm. Even though we're early in hurricane season here, we're already on our 8th storm. We have a long ways to go here, and I think the next couple of months, unfortunately, are going to be really active. This is the official track. Pressure really low. That is definitely low, like a hurricane generally would be. So if it continues to get its act together like it looks like it is, we'll see that. But you see the track going in towards South Texas. That's the area that's going to see primarily a lot of rain. Some spots probably over 10 inches, which is certainly going to cause some localized flooding. All right, guys, send it back to you.
All right, Rick, yeah, if you're partying on Padre, it's time to get off the beach. Turning now, though, to your headlines. A judge rules the gym at the center of controversy.
It appears the Republican legislative response to COVID is ununified, unserious, unsatisfactory.
What we have seen so far falls very short of the challenge that we face in order to defeat the virus.
Well, there you have Chuck and Nancy. Democrat leaders already speaking out against the Senate GOP stimulus plan before it is released next week.
But in a new op-ed, our next guest warns Democrats may be using the need for relief to push their own agenda.
Here now to explain it, Fox News contributor and chair of the Business and Finance program at the King's College in Manhattan, Brian Brinberg. Brian, good morning to you. Great op-ed out there. Obviously, things got stalled. McConnell says we'll see phase 4 on Monday, but you say what's in it could really be bad news.
Yeah, well, what I'm really concerned about, Griff, is that this isn't about coronavirus stimulus anymore. This isn't about recovery. This is about a convenient vehicle to get the Democrats' progressive agenda through Congress. I mean, you look at what we're talking about right now. We are talking about things that look like head scratchers when it comes to recovery. We're talking about forgiving student loans. We're talking about massive new programs for rent relief and mortgages. We're talking about another round of stimulus checks. And the question is, do these things really help us recover? Is this what the economy really needs, or is this just an opportunity to get this progressive agenda through by another means? Americans balked at the tens of trillions of dollars of price tag we saw with the Green New Deal, and now we're getting it on the installment plan. And I think America has to wake up to it. I think Republicans in Congress have to wake up to it. We have to talk about real stimulus or real relief, what the economy really needs, and not ideology right now.
Well, Brian, what is it that the economy really needs? Because you're right. I mean, in your op-ed, you point out Democrats are talking about high-efficiency washing machines, electric cars, solar panels. It's their grab bag of a wish list. They're never let a crisis go to waste. What should Republicans be targeting as a contrast?
We need a pro-growth agenda, Pete. The only thing that helps people at the end of the day is a growing economy where businesses are looking for workers and they're hiring again. So the measure we should be using for everything in this bill is, does it grow the economy or does it stall us out? Take the unemployment extension, for example. We know that when you extend unemployment benefits at a high level, it actually hurts recovery. It actually stalls the recovery because people face an impossible choice. Do I go to work and earn less than if I stay home? And the answer is they don't do it. So we need to have policy that gets people back to work. Republicans are talking about some that are good, a liability protection for businesses. We should be talking about ways that we could put more money in workers' pockets, make it easier for businesses to hire. I like the payroll tax. It looks like Republicans maybe have abandoned that. I think it's a mistake. Republicans need to go to the country with a pro-growth agenda, with something that gets people back to work, that makes sense to people intuitively. They know pork when they see it, and they know growth when they see it. I think Republicans have to do a much better job of putting that on the line clearly and not starting from a weak position when they negotiate with Speaker Pelosi.